Sarah Wellock, what is your favourite game?
I am Sarah Wellock, and my favourite game is Persona 3.
You don't need to say your name is Sarah Wellock. You don't need to do that.
Yeah, always. Know my name. Learn my name. Admire me. So I first got into games probably when I was still at primary school. So, oh my goodness, 8 to 13 feels like a good window. And my dad had an old BBC computer, which I loved. And we used to use it to learn, do history homework. Yeah, there's a great game or tool you could use to create a newspaper, which we always used to put like silly headlines about our teachers in. Mrs. Latham smells of poo. There's a game on that called Chucky Egg, and I got really into that game. And then there's another game on it called Granny's Garden, which I'm not sure if you ever played it or if you know of it.
I don't know of it, but there's someone who mentions it later in the season. I know that much.
Oh, I'm glad, because it's one of those games that, as a young player, it was terrifying. The whole story was you had to go through Granny's Garden to retrieve something. But it was like a BBC computer stealth RPG with terrible pixelated noise and graphics. And every time she appeared, it was like, bah! And it was terrifying. And so I spent ages playing those. And then one day my dad went away on holiday or something. My mum was out. I wanted to know what inside the computer looked like. So I took it apart and decided to try and rebuild it. And that was the first time that I kind of got interested in game development, because it was terrible. I completely ruined the machine. It ran just about, but I think the curiosity as a young girl about how do I make these computer games and how are the things that I enjoy doing, how are they coming to life, probably started around then.
I could just picture like that's how that was going to go.
Yeah. Dad was not happy. I was really proud of myself though, because you didn't realise it was broken until you tried to turn it on. I'd managed to mask my little adventure. But at the time, BBCs was super expensive. So that was a grounding for a while where I just played more video games.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Further down the line then, like how did that kind of pan out?
I remember getting a Game Boy. Loving that heavy brick of a games console, especially loving Kirby. I remember I remember it being the first generation of Game Boys where I took it on holiday to France with me camping, because that's what everyone did in the 80s and 90s. And I left it out in the sun for too long and the screen detached itself. And my dad fixed it, because we're a northern family, by putting black electrical tape all the way around the screen. So if you imagine you've got your Game Boy in your hand and you're trying to play games and you can't see about a third of what's going on because there's just this black tape.
Oh dear.
It worked.
I'm sure it worked, but did you not even have sellotape? Like transparent sellotape?
No, northern families don't use sellotape. Everything can be fixed with electrical tape. My granddad at the time had a caravan that all the cupboards and the chairs that were broken were also fixed with electrical tape. So it naturally applied to Game Boys.
Oh God!
I didn't have actually controversially never even had a Nintendo or a Mega Drive, because my mum got really conscious of the fact that we were young girls, and instead of going outside and playing, I'd stay in and play video games. So insisted that we did a lot of reading, which I admire, and I ended up doing English as my degree and being a huge fan of books as a result. But it did mean that I used to go and do my homework in huge inverted commas at my friend's house up the road, because she had a Mega Drive, and later on she got a PlayStation before me as well. I got PlayStation 1 eventually.
Like what games did you get with your PS1?
I remember Croc being amazing. Croc, Crash Bandicoot, every version of Croc. There are 3 versions of Croc. Spyro the Dragon.
Amazing game.
I love the Rayman. I remember really loving just how, as a young girl, how colourful all these games were. And I remember getting really into Tekken and being like, these graphics are real, just like real people. These little blocky Heihachi and his giant pyramid hair would come onto screen. I think one of the things I really miss now, looking back on my first foray into games, is getting all the demo discs you used to get for PlayStation 1 and 2.
Yeah, I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, and I used to love it, I guess. And there was a demo that had early FIFA on it, I think. And it was before, like, they really refined those games. And I remember me and my little sister used to just take it in turns with the goalkeeper, and we just run out and tackle everyone.
Oh, God.
We're like, this is not how you're supposed to play football games, is it? Or football, or any sport in the world.
Nope.
Yeah, and I think the first game for PlayStation 1 that I remember just the most vividly would probably be coming up to the first Silent Hill was on PlayStation 1, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I'm not going. Yeah, Silent Hill and Metal Gear being seminal kind of moments for me in eventually the type of games I really enjoyed and my career in games. I think Silent Hill, well, one, I really enjoyed it because if I ever played it, my little sister would leave the room because she was terrified, so I always got some time to myself. And I remember just being amazed that this scary thing was happening on screen, because by that point I'd seen Jurassic Park and my love affair of being kind of terrified had started. And then Metal Gear, I remember saving up to buy it and buying the super special edition that had the soundtrack with it. And thinking back, it was a really odd thing for me to buy because the soundtrack for that game was mostly that weird choir music. and I didn't listen to it. I didn't really enjoy that type of music. I was into my kind of slightly alternative phase then, but I loved the fact that I'd spent, you know, what back then was a huge amount of money on this special edition of something that made me really special. Even though not a single one of my friends played video games, I was the only one.
Moving on from PS1 then, like what about the PS2 days? Like, what were those like?
Yeah, I really struggled because the PS2 for me was, you get into kind of PS2 and PSP era where I was having a really tough time kind of growing up, I guess. I was struggling with my, you know, as you do in your teens, even late teens, struggling with your identity, and I was very, very, very badly bullied at school. Like, it was pretty bad. So games became super important to me, like the most important thing I did. And I started to make like one or two friends I had that also got into games. It was also around PlayStation 2 when I started to play PC games. And really obscurely, the first PC game I vividly remember playing was a Blair Witch game that was tied into the lore of the films and was genuinely terrified, where you had to run through the woods and take these totems in order to be safe, and it had like Easter eggs in it that we'd found using a jukebox. And I remember thinking, wow, PC is so much better than PlayStation. When I'm older, I'll obviously play on PC because nothing will ever look this good. And was still kind of right, probably, that PC is still beautiful and I still play it quite as much. But I think PlayStation 2, Silent Hill 2, if I didn't talk about Persona, I would have talked about Silent Hill 2.
Well,
like, it,
yeah.
Two sides of the same coin for me in terms of moments of importance. So I think the Final Fantasy games, I kind of stopped playing after 10 because I love 10. And F1 loves 10. It's impossible not to love 10. But then I remember them getting, not liking the world so much for me. Like, there was the one with the rabbits or bunnies or something. There was pirates, I think. Had a young boy with blonde hair.
12.
That's the one. And I think for like Final Fantasy, it goes 7, 9, 10 for me in order of, you know, the most awesome to, you know, still really awesome, but top 3. And the, like, having portable games as well. Because do you remember years ago, what was a portable Mega Drive called?
Oh, God.
It had an Echo the Dolphin on it.
I know what you're on about, but I can't...
Can't you remember the name?
I can't for the life of me remember it.
Oh, I can't remember. But I never had one of them, and I was always really sad. And I had my little trusty electrical tape Game Boy. So PSP for me was perfect. It was portable, so when I had bad days at school, I could, you know, hide in a corner and play it. And the Persona series was a little late coming to the West, so Persona 1 and 2, I got really late in the game. And I remember loving just how difficult they were. They're not very forgiving games. There is no room for error. And even Persona 4 on PlayStation, before obviously the remake of Golden, was just really, really, really difficult. And I think PlayStation 2, for me, signified the kind of infatuation with RPGs and really wanting to play games that were really, deep and complicated and rewarding with these complex tree systems and levels. Because I was spending so much time playing them, I needed something that was a bit more had more longevity than a car racing game or a football game, or even the Tekken games that I loved, to the point where Tekken 3, I was competing at local arcades and became quite reputable, I'll have you know. Coming down to finals in a UK championship, I remember. And I think I liked Tekken because it had just the most insane story ever. There was like Angel Jin and Demon Jin and his father who died but came back, and then there was a Japanese schoolgirl that had a panda as a bodyguard because reasons. And the panda was in love with the other bodyguard bear, Kuma, that was Paul Phoenix's guy. And I think PlayStation 2 was the era, and I know it's hotly debated on the best era of games, but PlayStation 2 for me signified the era of just the madness and brilliance of Japanese games, and them becoming really popular in the West. And for me, finding my identity with those games. And I still, obviously 31-year-old Sarah now looks back and goes, good choice in games. I regret none of those games. I look back at Sarah age 8 to 10, and I'm like, oh, maybe you shouldn't have spent so much time playing that terrible, terrible platformer.
Talk of how you first got in the industry side of things.
I had been trying for a very, 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 probably since I was about 18. And before I went to university, obviously you have to make those difficult decisions with UCAS and the courses you want to do. And I initially wanted to go into programming, but I wasn't very good. I'm just not. I'm not technical enough, and I'm especially bad at anything that involves, numbers and crunching and science that programming has. And so I decided to do English and history because I've been reading a lot. And actually, because I decided I wanted to write video games, I wanted to write stories. I'd spent all this time playing these Japanese games, these great overarching themes and messages, and I thought I would really like to write it. And I think Silent Hill 2 as well kind of made me think, I want to create a story in a world. I think I'd be really good at it. I'm imaginative, I'm a good writer. That does not really translate at university when you're doing essays on sonnets and the Russian military system. And unfortunately, when I came out of uni, I got, they call it the drinker's degree. I got a 2-2, which wasn't really what I wanted, but I'm surprised I got it. And I started writing to games companies saying, I'm young, I'm at university. I even wrote to Rockstar saying I want to write a new Grand Theft Auto game. No concept of the real world. I'm 21 and I'm just winging it. I didn't know there were recruitment agencies. I didn't know how you got a job in games. I assumed you just wrote and you'd get in. And unfortunately, and unsurprisingly, in the credit to all the companies I wrote to, nobody was really interested in a just graduated young girl who doesn't really do a cover letter or CV, but really, really, really likes video games. And so I decided, I didn't give up. I decided that I would try and get some experience. Did a couple of years in advertising and media in London, and got great experience under my belt in all the technical side as well, learning how to do web design, learning as much as I could about anything tech so that I had some experience. But for a while, the dream was dead. I kind of forgot about it. I kept playing games. I obviously got my PlayStation 3 and my Xbox 360. I remember Halo 3 being this is the most beautiful. I couldn't believe how beautiful it was. But I was lucky, I guess, in the fates of the world that I got, as part of the media company I was working for, we did some banner ads for Rockstar for Grand Theft Auto 4. And then we did some work for Sega Europe, for Football Manager. And having spoken to those guys and working with the guys at Sports Interact and Sega closely, they were looking for someone to run an affiliate marketing campaign for their new MMO, Football Manager Live. God bless its soul. R.I.P. And I interviewed for that, and it was a very unusual interview process. If you're familiar with Miles Jacobson, if you've never met anyone like Miles, meeting Miles is a little intimidating. And I remember being grilled in my interview, and he won't mind me telling people that he asked for my Xbox gamer tags so he could check to see if I really played games. Because at the time, girls in the industry was very rare, and especially at a football company making a football simulator game. But James Shaw, who ended up being my manager, was a real champion for me, and still to this day, an amazing guy and a good friend. And Miles now is an amazing friend. I love him to pieces. But got the job working at Sports Interactive on Football Manager Live. Immediately, it was like, this is it. This is it. This is where I was meant to be. Worked 2 years on Football Manager Live for them to decide it just didn't work. And unfortunately, got made redundant about 2 years in. But the good thing is that I had the experience. And the thing about the games industry that was so different to media and advertising for me was that everyone was really nice. The contacts I made when I lost my job were all really, really keen to help. Everyone was really nice. I'd made contacts at IGN at this point. And I think it's been since then that I've always felt like I was kind of part of a really great professional community within video games. And since then, I've been really, really privileged to work at Rocksteady, on Arkham Asylum and Arkham City. Worked at PlayStation development team for a few years on Little Big Planet, Until Dawn, Resogun, and now work at Bethesda on their amazing suite of games. And I think it's been a mix of kind of persistence and perseverance, but also really meeting people in the industry like James and Miles and Dax at Rocksteady, who will take essentially a punt on somebody who doesn't have the experience. For Rocksteady, I definitely didn't have the experience to be a community manager in such a big game. No way. I definitely didn't have it, but I was so excited and passionate in the interview that I think they were willing to take that risk on me.
Let's get into your favourite game, Persona 3. You were playing them on PSP, right?
Yes.
Yes, because like they were notoriously really if I remember correctly, Persona 1 and 2 came out in 2009 in the West, and then Persona 3 came 2010. So
oh my god, that makes me feel really old. I instantly feel old.
It makes me feel old. And I'm 24.
2010. Oh my goodness.
Jeez.
Wow, I'm surprised when I was thinking about my favourite game. I initially was thinking back to the games that you play in your childhood, and Silent Hill, Final Fantasy, Metal Gear, all these games that I was like, yeah, these are the games that I grew up with. But there's something about Persona 3 that I think it hit a lot of memories. Even though it was an older game, it played to a lot of memories I'd had in my childhood. And to be honest, was just insane. There was a dog that could kind of talk and wield a knife in battle.
I don't think I've gotten that far in 3 yet, so I don't know if that's actually in 3 or the first 2 Persona games.
Oh, you've not finished 3? I'm going to have to be careful with the spoiler. You should
play
it.
No,
Oh, no, play it. It's important you play it.
No. It's spoiler free. No, we're not spoiler free. You can go nuts on spoilers. It's fine. I'm not really that fussed. Go for it. But yeah, I was going to say, when you first got into the Persona games, like with 1 and 2, and bear in mind, there was actually 2 was a two-parter, so to speak. How did you first get on with those 2 games, basically?
Persona 2 was referenced once in PlayStation Magazine eons ago, they did a feature on great Japanese games that we wish we could play here, or why aren't we playing these? When there's great top 10 lists.
Yeah.
And it featured in there, and the description of it, I really vividly remember saying something about kind of difficult dungeons, vast worlds. You had to go to school. You had to balance, demons and friendship and love and studying. And I was like, what? How could a video game make studying moderately fun? And how can these three exist in this world? And even Persona 3, I remember reading interviews with the team behind it, and they always said the most important thing with any artwork they did for the Persona series 1, 2, 3, 4, and come up to 5, is that the ad always contained these three important elements. And regardless of whichever franchise it was always about school, persona, and friendship. And so any picture you'll see will always have something that links back to the school they're studying in the game, some kind of friendship image, and a persona. And it's across all the games. And I think that, for me, regardless of the Persona title, obviously 3 has a big space in my heart, but that kind of ideology behind them, I think is brilliant. I think it's absolutely unique. I think it's something that everyone can relate to on some level. Like, everyone's been to school. And all the Persona games deal with the challenges of growing up, regardless of how old you are. Even the older characters, Akihiko and Fuka, in 3, who are the older, wiser students, still have a lot of growing up to do. Persona 4, you even think of your uncle, how much he changes throughout the story of the game. It doesn't matter whether you're the young pop starlet or you're the outsider coming in for a term. Every character will go through these huge, significant growths regardless of age. And it's the only franchise for me that I've felt that in every game. Like, always different stories, always different worlds, but I'm always like, it's just so consistent and well thought out. You can always imagine the development of it having this greater arc and storyline in mind, as well as brilliant leveled character design.
Absolutely. So each Persona game, it's different. Like, they're numbered, but like with Final Fantasy, so to speak, like, they're all different in terms of character, story, and location. Like, give a brief overview on 3 for those who have somehow yet to basically bask in the majestic of Persona 3.
3 was a significant change for the series, because 1 and 2 had a character artist called Kazuma Kaneko. I apologize to anyone who speaks Japanese. I'm probably going to say a lot of names wrong. And he had done the first 2 games and created this very distinct style. But for 3, it was Shigenori Sojima. And he had this huge amount of pressure on him because the series had got this very, very dedicated fan base. But he wanted to make the players of the Megami Tensei, which is the kind of author of the series, feel like they've been supportive for their passion for the first 2 games, but also to try and find a way to make the game more accessible to a wider audience. So 3 was very different visually. It was much more manga inspired. It had a lot more mecha in the enemy design and in the world design. And you said that the other characters you had could be controlled by AI, which was new. So if you went into a battle with 3 characters, if you remember, like, if you play Persona 4 Golden, you'll know you can either choose to have the characters act on their own, or you do it for them. And that necessarily wasn't something you could do before. So being able to do it was a huge change to the series. But the story of 3, in a nutshell, I mean, it's going to sound really cliched when you simplify it, and if you played 4, you'll recognize these beats, is that you're a new student, you get put in this dorm, it's not the dorm you're supposed to be in, Persona happens the way it always does, and the game talks through something, you fighting your way up a vertical building called the Tartarus, which comes out of your school. Now, whereas Persona 4 almost feels like you're going horizontally, Persona 3 was all about just height. Like, you could get to like hundreds, 110, 120 floors, and you'd rescue people from the school who got trapped in these floors. But Persona 3 was much more around the school experience than 4 was. It talked a lot more about kind of one of the characters that you meet, who is sort of your Rise, and if I don't remember the name, I'm going to kill myself. Fuma? I remember her name. It's completely gone. But I remember her name was terribly bullied throughout the game. And then one of these girls bullies her terribly. Then she comes and saves the day. and then the girl goes missing in the tower and is racked with guilt for the whole thing. And it was all on Persona 3 was all on a timer, so you'd fight your way up the Tartarus, and towards the end they'd be like, "Brilliant, you made it this far, but everyone's gonna die on Christmas Eve if you don't get any further in 10 days." So everything was really, really time sensitive, similar to 1 and 2, where you were working on this much more. You have to do this, or the world's gonna end. Life as we know it will change. These shadows that have been creeping through the world are going to start taking innocent lives. But it was a really complicated game. Every character you could have in your party for battle or you'd interact with all had these huge storylines that were often really sad. There was the lovely dog that we talked about that you end up rescuing from a shrine where it's been mourning its owner's death, and every time you go and walk the dog, you have to walk it past its shrine so it can go and pay respects until it will come and join your group because it feels like it's at peace. Karamaru is the dog's name. There we go.
And the bully student's name is Fuka.
Thank you. I keep saying Fuma. I was like, no, that's not it. Fuka. I loved Fuka. So 3 was is very different to 4 in that it's actually a lot darker. So 3 was the last game in the Persona series where they had an aggressive act to summon their personas. So they would put a gun to their head and pull the trigger, and the persona would come out, which tied into everyone having these quite difficult backstories, and that in order to summon their inner strength, you'd have to do this physical act that represented you doing the ultimate, essentially weak act of killing yourself. And it was very controversial at the time because a little boy in your group called Ken would do the same thing. And he's got this 10-year-old boy, 11 I think, mimicking suicide, did not go down hugely well. And as a result, actually, they didn't do it that way again. They did it, as you see in 4 and the trailers for 5, where they have a card, or I can't tell what they do in 5 yet. I think they punch their fist or do something exciting like that.
I was just about to bring up the whole gun notion, but yeah, I think you summed it up best. Probably not best to do that.
Yeah, and I can understand. Like, the game has always been about pushing our perceptions, and a persona itself is a character that a creation within you that protects you, which I always thought was as an idea was brilliant. So everyone's got, like, if you say you've got an alter ego or something inside that's like, no, you're good, you're safe, you're protected, that would be your persona. So the way it's been summoned has changed a lot, I think, for the eras. I think everyone was probably a little less sensitive about this stuff, to be honest. Because I'm an old fogey. Back in the day when 3 came out.
I was going to bring this up as its own kind of main portion, but just like, what other characters stood out for you in terms of Persona 3? Like, especially the one other character that kind of is perhaps the most famous out of the game is Aegis.
Yes, dude, I loved her, but she was probably my least favorite. And I was trying to think about why, because I had a lot of time for Akihiko, not just because he was a dreamboat. But I think Aegis, it was difficult to relate to her, at least, because I wasn't really into Japanese manga or anime at the time. And she's a very mecha manga character, and she's very kind of, all the jokes are around her not really understanding how girls should behave and how funny that was. But I think it was difficult to connect her. Do you know, she reminded me of Miranda in Mass Effect. When I was like, oh, Miranda, your problem is you're perfect? Man, I'm so sorry. Like, it's difficult to find a level to connect to somebody, and even Aegis, who her dilemma being her creation and how she fits, and I really don't like how she fits into the future of the world and the Tartarus is obviously a big reveal towards the end, and how she struggles with the classic AI dilemma of you're created to do this, you get really close to people, you Crichton yourself, and you break your programming. But I think for me, I always, if you could relate them back to Persona 4 characters, Junpei was the one that I always had a real connection with. He's the kind of the Yosuke of Persona 3. And the fun, outgoing one, the one who really welcomes you at the beginning. But whereas in Persona 4, Yosuke is always looked at you. Regardless, Yosuke is always your best friend. In Persona 3, regardless whether you play as a girl or a guy, and if people don't know, when you play Persona 3, if you play as a female, you do get different dialogue options, you get slightly girlier music, pink menu. You know, years ago, people are not quite as sensitive as that now, but you get a harder story as well. But Junpei would, midway through Persona 3, just be a complete douchebag to you. Because he thought he was, like, the leader of this group. And he thought he'd be the strong one to protect all the girls and all the group. And you have a long period of the game where he's just terrible to you. Sort of like Ron was in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. Where he gets jealous of the fact you're doing so well and feels left out. And even, like, gets reckless, almost gets himself killed and falls for this terrible enemy girl. And I remember really relating to that at the time because I was going through uni, I was still really struggling with some of the bullying I'd had and struggling to grow up and figure out who I was. I mean, for goodness sake, if anyone sees pictures of me from that era, I've got long black hair and I wear bracelets up past my elbows. I had no idea who Sarah was at this point. And I really related to this poor guy who thought he'd made this group of friends, then got usurped by an outsider. Just came in and took all the glory. Even Akihiko, who was this like the fighter of the group and was very athletic and very handsome man that had like a group of girls that followed him around everywhere. Even he struggled a lot during Persona 3 with kind of always being strong and being the one to lead people through. And it was the depth of the characters in 3 that I think, for me, I really connected with. And I think a lot of people did, to be honest. Even your classic silent protagonist that you are, if you play as a girl or a guy, the different dialogue options you get are really interesting. They allow you to kind of be weak and strong in very different ways, which was really progressive for the time. Like, how many games could you list from that era where you could play as a female character that wasn't all bust?
Exactly. I was actually just about to bring up the female protag as well, but yeah, like you said, there was nothing like it at the time. It was so progressive.
Yeah.
And in another way as well, because like, and in doing it and reading up notes, because like I've only played perhaps 2, maybe 3 hours of Persona 3, so like the rest of the list is more or less notes. But Agnes can fall in love with the female protagonist if the social link is maxed out. You don't you don't have that in the rest of the games, because obviously you don't have a female protagonist in the rest of the games. But like that was amazing. But like it also like brings forward the fact that the Persona series as a whole, like certainly from 3 onwards, is a very progressive thing when it comes to, you know, LGBT stuff. Because like obviously with Persona 4 as well, there's Kanji as well.
And Naoto, essentially, talking about trans identity.
Yeah.
That was a huge deal. I've never found the characters in Persona, and especially in Persona 3, sexualized in any way. In fact, in Persona 3, I'd argue the boys are more sexualized than the girls. Because I think it's never really been, even the romance. So, like, if you play as a girl in Persona 3, you can also romance Akihiko and Junpei. And they're 2, like, wildly different romance options. And the Akihiko one is very sweet. The Junpei one starts off with him being quite, you know, boyish and braggish and like, oh, let's go back to your room, ha ha. And then when you finally do go back to your room, he's like, I don't know. Like, oh my goodness, let's read a book. Whereas in Persona 4, I always found that if you did the romance stuff, when you finally got, like, I always romanced Yukiko, because Yukiko is my bae. No, I couldn't. You know, and I've seen the Japanese version of Persona 4, and I can't stand the American VO of Chie. It's like her voice is like nails on a chalkboard for me. And I always liked the kind of demure, like the outfit that Yukiko had, and I liked, you know, I really liked her dungeon, which sounds like.
Yeah.
But in 3, you'd romance, and it would become like important to the person you romance, how I'm going to fight for you, I'm going to be strong for you. Whereas in 4, it felt more to me like, now you're in my room, and it was like just cutesy and fun, but it felt important in 3. It felt like if you romance somebody, regardless of your gender, it was an important thing to do. For example, if you play as a boy in 3 and you want to romance Mitsuru, who is the main kind of female character in it, it's really difficult because she's the smart one. She's like part of this huge heritage with the company her dad owns. She's really, really studious. So to do it, you have to do so much stuff. It's like you have to max out your study, max out your intelligence. You have to really specific options for her. You can't fail any tests because the point is like she has got no time for your messing. She is not going to waste her time on some flaky boy. Like, you have to earn the time with her. And I really respected that in terms of games design. They may not have thought it was meant to be that. They may have thought, oh, we're just doing it because we don't want to make it easy for people. But it always felt to me like it was significant. Because Mitsuru is the character who, even though she was so strong, was actually probably the weakest and didn't know what she was fighting for and didn't really feel like she had any friends. So you having to really prove yourself to her in order to even get her on her own. She wouldn't even talk to you. 0 dialogue options. I thought was really smart. And was it like similar to the trans with Naoto and Kanji coming to terms with his sexuality or not really coming to terms with it in the case of what happens? Has always been representative of them being less about sex and more about what sexuality means to individual people. And it's the only franchise, for me at least, that does that in an adult way, that is accessible and not, hardcore or complicated or too simplified.
It's all about the relationship.
Yeah, and I mean, I've had many debates about Kanji in 4, and I'm sure whoever you have on to talk about Persona 4 probably talks about it, but whether Kanji actually comes to terms with sexuality isn't really addressed.
So with that in mind, like the quality gap between 3 and 1 and 2, like what put me off about 1 is that I bought it after I played 4 and to a lesser extent 3, and like it's not so much there's a quality gap there and that all the games are bad. It's just I was more used to the 3D aspects of 4 and 3. What 1 and 2 are not 3D, so to speak, on the same level 3 and 4 are. So like, talk about that a little bit, like how you found that jump.
It's interesting because have you ever played the Shin Megami Tensei games on Nintendo?
I have not. No.
So like Devil Survivors and Overclock, there's probably about 8 or 9 games realistically that Shin Megami Tensei has done that have all been a very similar ilk. And I've actually played his earlier stuff on Nintendo, and that looks better than Persona 1 and 2. But it's a very different style. It's very classical anime, but it is like 3D modeled. And if you buy the re-release them on 3DS now, and I really recommend playing them. They're the games that changed the series quite fundamentally, because what you could do in those games is you go into fights, a demon would pop up, and you could negotiate with the demon. So the demon would be like, I'm going to eat you! And you could be like, but what about if you did this? And depending on your skill level at that time, it could join you and become one of yours, or it would just continue to attack you. And they got rid of that for Persona later down the line. But I think the graphics in the previous Shin Megami Tensei and then Persona 1 and Persona 2 were all modelled for me around that like quite classic dungeon experience, where it's like everything's quite narrow corridors, you don't have to render a lot of content in. Even the open spaces are quite restrictive. And it's never really put me off particularly. Classic Persona fans, I'm aware, think that 3 is too easy and looks too kind of childlike, because it was so graphically different and it's so long in development. But the only real difference with 3 and 1 and 2, other than like you say, in not looking quite so blocky, almost, was just it's just more colourful in the other games, and that was because they had a new character artist on board. And even though it is a pretty grim storyline, it's not quite as grim as 1 and 2, which are really, like, everything's very brown and grey and dark, and even when you go around the cities, you mostly go around them at night. So it's all just very oppressive. So graphically, I would say, like, 3 is a big jump, but in terms of brightness, that's where the bigger jump is with 3. The bigger change for 3, and then 4 goes multicoloured. Super crazy colourful, was the introduction of making everything much more light and airy and colourful, which I've always felt like it's a representation of the different characters they have in the schools. And as they fleshed out the characters more, you've got more to play with, more in character design, more in persona design. Like even the character costumes or the character design in 1 and 2 is quite simple. And then when you get 3, you've got Mitsuru, who one of her weapon is like a rapier sword because she was a fencing champion, and even her character costume is like a white shirt with huge frilly collars and knee-high black boots, and it's high fashion. Junpei is like, there's one of his like skater fashion with a cap backwards, and even Aegis has a sense of style to her, like almost 1950s, 1960s. And Persona 3, the big jump was just its level of stylization, if that's the word. It becoming a very stylized experience, but without changing its core mechanics. And it alienated some people, but people like you and even myself, who's played them all, it brought a whole new audience to the franchise that meant that 4 could be done twice. And then Dancing All Night, and then 5. And that I think 3 is the turning point where it goes from being these very dark stories, very difficult combat, very oppressive worlds that are very complicated, to these bright, colourful worlds. But if you dive into it, you can make it very complicated. If you try playing Persona 4 Gold on hard, the leap is insane. It goes from being this still quite challenging experience to it, you're not being able to kill the gold hands, the treasure hands. You're like, what is this difference? Because the difficulty spikes are so incremental in them, that Persona 4 hard is pretty similar to what Persona 1 and 2 was like normally. And even Persona 3 on normal is really difficult. It's not an easy experience. Each floor feels tangibly more difficult in the Tartarus, whereas in Persona 4 the difficulty was spiked around the character dungeon rather than each individual basement 1, basement 2.
So with 3, it's all the inclusion of social links. For me, obviously they would play a big part in Persona 4 and Persona 4 Golden, but they were needless to say, was there really a thought in that time, looking back on it now, is what I'm trying to say, is that did anyone at Team Persona think this would be such a defining feature from Persona 3 onwards, the social links? Because they weren't a big part of 1 and 2.
Yeah, they're really difficult as well. In 3, they're not quite. I mean, they're difficult in 4. Everyone knows the pain of 4, of trying to balance out your studying, but also making sure you're super friendly with people. I think what I imagine Team Persona, and I always imagine them sitting on these lovely clouds making masterpieces for everyone, is that the games in Shin Megami Tensei's world, whether it's Nintendo, PlayStation, whichever of them, have always had social interactions be the core of it. The centre has always been. In Persona 3, I really don't want to spoil the ending.
Go for it.
Has just a stunk of an ending where you've got time travel, you've got Aegis becomes this meta entity, and it's insane. Honestly, if people don't finish it, there's a video you can watch of it happening where you're like, what is this ending? It's really complicated, but it becomes about your character and your death. And Persona 3, the story is essentially how you died and why you died, but through involving time travel and mechanoids and a lot of complicated demons. And the social links were so important to Persona 3 because the friends you make in the dorm who help keep you going towards the end of the game when you come to a final fight sequence. Everyone ends up getting knocked out, and Mitsuru gives this kind of speech of her graduation speak, and it's what you hear all these voices of everyone saying, "You can do it, you're my friend, we're friends forever." Wah! And it raises you from this slumber. And of course the demon's like, "Oh no, how have you done it?" So introducing social links for 3, I've always felt was part of the greater story they were trying to tell about how important friendship is, and how it doesn't really come across in 1 and 2. 1 and 2, it comes across that you're with these people, they got great combat skills, they can help you. Cool. It isn't really hitting the beats they want to hit. And the social links hit that so well because you can choose to learn more about people and be rewarded for it in a tangible way through, obviously, combat skills, evolved personas, new dialogue. with Persona 3, if you maxed out Aegis, your ending was quite significantly different because she would honour you in a way that she wouldn't do normally, regardless of her programming. And I think that's why social links have continued. Even like Persona Q doesn't really count. Dance School Night, I've not played it yet, so I can't say. But 4 and what it looks like in 5, that social links are still going to be the core to developing characters you fight with, which is a brilliant idea. At its simplest, it's saying, hey, you've made some friends, why don't you learn some more about them? And they'll probably help you more because they like you more, which is common sense. It's regardless whether it's in a video game or real life, the nicer you are to people, the more they're going to want to help you. What I'd like to know is how they built the algorithm for it. Like, that must be complicated, because in Persona 4, you remember, like, you get a whole different ending if you pick 3 different dialogue options at one point.
Yep.
Like, decisions like that, what were they thinking? Was there, like, one guy, like, one wild card in the corner who's like, hey, no, we're really funny, guys. Let's do this. No, Dave, that's wild. No, Steve, let's do it. I believe we can do this, and I don't think anyone... And with Persona 4, what baffles me when I think about that is that there was no internet, really, or it was... How would you have found the right answers? Would you have, like, finished the game with your mates and been like, yeah, it's good, but I felt like it was really short, and they're like, oh, it was like 300 hours to me, and you'd be like, what? How did you get... You couldn't Google it. It's like Metal Gear Solid 1, like, look at the back of the box and Meryl's codec number. Force wall.
I don't know if I'm going to be able to pronounce this right. So, Persona 3 is set in, and again, I hope I pronounce this right, Iwatodai and Gekukan High School, like, their main locations in the game. Like, how did you find them compared to Inaba in Persona 4? Like, because obviously, like, those 2 locations in Persona 3, they're very metropolitan, whereas Inaba is, like, way out in the Japanese countryside. Like,
yeah, it feels like for me the Persona series is doing a different looks at Japan and the different worlds of Japan, because Iwatada is quite, like, dense and small, and even the areas you can go and hang out in, it's like you can go and hang out at a railway station. Brilliant. You can go and hang out in a back alley, or you can hang out in, like, what's their town square, which is like a fountain with 4 shops, and there's a shopping mall which is like a really old school Japanese shopping mall. So even though it's a city, it still feels less developed than the towns you can go to in 4. If you think about when you go to the shopping centre there, and when you look at 5, which looks like just this insane replication of Shibuya.
Yeah.
And I think it's to do with the characters you have. So in Persona 4, you come from the city to a small town, but it's not really a small town. It's sort of a village with a city nearby. And then in 5, you live on the streets, from what I can gather, and then you go to school. And in Persona 3, it was more about kind of you being exiled off to boarding school, not really wanting to go and having to stay in dormitories there, and then going out into the kind of small grotty town afterwards. So Persona 3 always felt like you'd already arrived, like, I fucked up somehow to end up here. I didn't really want to end up in this boarding school situation, and why am I in the girls' dorm? Oh my goodness, I'm a boy.
And the other big location for the game was the other side of it, so to speak, Tartarus, as the main dungeon for the game. Like, again, how did you find that compared, massively to the straight batshit weirdness of the Midnight Channel in 4?
Yeah, it's much more... Persona 3's Tartarus is much more classic RPG dungeon, and it's not particularly inspiring design-wise. Like, you go into floors, and it's like one floor, you run around a corner. Feels a bit more like a maze. You're given a lot less guidance on what you're doing. So it's, like, less interesting for battle. It's less themed. It's not themed at all. It's just, this gets really difficult the higher up you go. So I probably didn't enjoy that as much as I do enjoy the dungeons based around your feelings and your concerns that you get in Persona 4. Persona 3's dungeons are much closer to the Persona 1 and 2 combat sequences, where you just kind of run from point A to point B. But what I did like with 3 is that before you get prompted to go into Tartarus at different points, like, oh no, this young girl's gone in there, but it's your friend, you have to go in. And there's always a great sense of story. And in Persona 3, there's also this not wild cards, not the right word, but it's also a group of other kids who have the abilities to see at the midnight hour. But they're like bad guys. So like you go into these fights and they appear and they throw spanners in the works. And it feels much more dramatic when you go into Tartarus. Like, oh no, this happened! Quick, we're gonna go and rescue him, and then we're still gonna go in and fight these monsters. Whereas in Persona 4, you get like one cutscene before you go in, and then you're in, and then you grind your way through. Different format, I think. A more classical design in terms of visuals, but a more rewarding narrative structure, which sounds kind of wanky, but it's probably like the closest way to describe it.
Like, how did you find the enemy design in there?
I really, really like the heavy mecha design in Persona 3, and I missed that in 4. 4 is much more kind of, always felt more mythical, more kind of Alice in Wonderland-y almost. Whereas the enemy design in 3 is really, it's like you get a lot of those tanks, if you remember, with the sort of eye on the top, that you get occasionally in 4. They're like whole enemy fights you have. There's a lot more creative boss fights for me in 3. So if you think of the enemy fights, like the final fights you have in 4, are quite classic. It's either one guy, you fight him, he dies, or one guy spawns 4 more guys. There are ones in 3 that are like 2 different characters that separate and actually 2 different boss battles, but they'll reform to create like a mega boss midway through, and you just defend and hope you don't die. There was always felt like the design was much more technical and mechanic focused. So it was a really different feel, which reflected the setting of 3. If you think Mitsuru's father is the head of the biggest corporation out there, the town is much darker and built around industrial companies. It felt like that was actually reflected in enemy design, which I don't think you get the same way in 4. Enemy design feels like it's kind of samey depending on the dungeon. It changes a little bit. But 3, it feels like it's always dark and mechanical and oppressive and a bit depressing, just like, Mitsuru's father's company or Iwatadai itself.
The other thing that I've picked up on that with Persona 3, especially with portable enemies, is that there's cameos in 3 with characters from 4, especially with Yukiko. And I'm certain with this cameo, Catherine is part of the Persona universe, because with Vincent in P3P as well.
Yeah, and in Persona 4, you go and visit Gekkoukan High School.
Yes, you do.
And I was like playing it like, I remember this logo, I recognise the icon on her jumper. And like, I was like, so few people are going to get this, and how exciting this is. And then the girl you talk to is one of the students you meet in Persona 3. I like the fact, though, that they're Easter eggs and they're not, true sequels. I don't think because it's always about one character influencing a lot of others and creating this snowball of effects, that if you ever had a sequel to it, it'd feel kind of weird. Even Persona Dancing All Night isn't a sequel to 4. It's all the characters from 4 helping the new character, I believe. I've not played it yet. So I think the fact Persona's never done sequels is to its merit. I don't think Persona would work as a sequelized? That's a word. A sequelized series.
You certainly won't see something like a Persona 4 2 or a Persona 3 2, similar to, say, Final Fantasy X 2 or Final Fantasy 13 2 or Lightning Returns Final Fantasy 13.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the reasons that I ended up being a bigger Persona fan than a Final Fantasy fan, is that even the later ones, and I know everyone has their opinions, and everyone gets upset when I don't like the new Final Fantasy games, but when you've got like Lightning Strikes again, I'm like, just
stop.
Stop, guys. Oh, well, what is the new Kingdom Hearts called? Kingdom Hearts Ultimate Despair Prologue Chapter 1 or whatever it is, or something stupid.
Yes. Oh, God.
Because it's interesting for me, because Persona's been... I'm replaying Persona 3 now. I'm trying to replay Persona 3 and Persona 4 before 5. I'm 90% sure this won't happen. So Dancing All Night comes out. I'll play that. But the games that I've gotten into, that kind of dungeon, Persona fusion, crazy characters, I never really kind of moved on from. It's like, I love Danganronpa. And I know it's a game that really divides people because it's odd. And visually it's one of the best looking game out there. And I think it's always tied back to me with 3, and that feeling of a world created and just playing a game where people have to deal with the hands they're dealt. And even if they seem on the surface like really good hands, Mitsuru is from a wealthy family, you go to her summer home, it's like a palace. She should be the happiest girl in the world. And she's not. She doesn't know who she is and what she's doing because she's a teenager. Persona 4, you've got your Kiko, who should, be laughing. Rise should definitely be the happiest girl in the world right now. She's like a superstar. And as someone who's been through kind of rough years growing up and figuring out who they are and what the right thing to do is, it's always going to be the type of game I can pick up again and really enjoy. And Danganronpa, even though it's insane and doesn't really deal with the same kind of complicated themes, it still deals with this idea of normal people who are made fun of being normal, especially in Danganronpa Ultra Despair Girls, which I recommend playing, that you're the boring normal girl and you couldn't possibly do these things because you're nothing. You're not the ultimate hero or the ultimate athleticism, but actually you're just as awesome as everyone else. Yeah, it's a little bit of a soapbox cheering moment, but I don't care.
What else do you like about Persona 3 that we've not talked about tonight?
I really like the Western VO in it. I think they did a better job than they did with 4. And what they did with 3 that's really cool is that when they did the localized text, so you play some Japanese games, and you're like, I don't understand why these jokes are funny. I guess if you're Japanese, these are, hilarious. But you don't understand. What they did is they actually kept mostly Japanese, what do you call it? Honorifics. So the honorifics that they use in the original Japanese script are retained in the new one. They add this kind of much more meaning because it means that during the process of translation, some of the Japanese humor was replaced with jokes that, they parallel the original. You're not replacing it completely, but if you're playing a English version of the game, you're like, oh, that does kind of make sense, and you can have a laugh without taking away from, the Japanese text. And I think Persona 3's translation and localization is spot on. There's not really any English in there. You don't feel like you're playing a Japanese game that's been badly ported to the West. And I don't think you feel that in 4 Golden, but stuff like Chie's terrible voice actress. Oh, why? And I think I imagine she's a super talented, awesome person. I'm certainly not saying she's awful at her job. It's just something in the translation when they were doing it, they probably didn't provide enough of a character brief. Like, if you read the script, I'm sure Chie just sounds like she's super duper excited all the time. And that everything is insanely loud and brilliant. But she's not really all the time. Most of the time, whereas like Mitsuru and Akihiko and Junpei in 3 have got absolutely brilliant voice acting. Even Aegis, like, she doesn't sound like a robot. She isn't Peter Dinklebot. She's more kind of, she sounds slightly stilted, and she's got no inflection in her voice. But that's it. That's the only thing that, obviously her outfit makes you realise she's a robot, but her voice isn't like, hello, I am Aegis. There's a delicate touch to the way that I think 3 was brought to the West that I have a lot of time for, and the manga and the cutscenes in it, I don't think there's any games that have that kind of strength of visual without having to render, huge 3D, complicated sequences. Like, it reviewed really well. I was checking recently. I think it's 89 on Metacritic.
What didn't you like about it?
I had everything. No, I didn't. Like I said, I wasn't the biggest fan of Aegis. Even though she's so central to the storyline and how that resolves itself. I did find the dungeon, the Tartarus gets a bit chore-like after a while because it's huge. So when somebody says to you, get to the top of those stairs, it'll take you 10 minutes. You'll rattle up those stairs and do it quickly. If someone said to you, get to the top of those stairs, it's 500 steps, you'd be like, oh my goodness, this is going to be awful. It's going to take me so long. And the Tartarus has a problem where you always know how many floors you have to go up and how little progress you've made. So you always feel like, oh my goodness, I've been playing for 5 hours and I've still got 25 floors to go until I reach floor 110. So you're like, it's a taskmaster. You sit down, you play that game, and you're like, I'm going to play this game for 3 hours. Otherwise, I probably won't feel like I've achieved something. And I think they could have balanced that out a little better. Persona 4 does a really good job with the dungeons. Even 2 actually gives you a nice sense of progression when you go through combat sequences. The Tartarus, I think it's human nature. When you feel like you're going up, the sense of progression is slower because you can see how far you have to go up. And you actually, in Persona 3, you don't really have a sense of height until you reach the deadline of Christmas Eve. Then it shows you how far you have to go, and your heart just drops because you feel like at that point you're like, yes, I'm at the ending. I've done. Oh wait, no, I haven't. Oh my goodness, there's still so much to do. Oh my god.
This is as close as I'm going to be able to talk about this for a long time until someone actually comes on and gets their own episode on it. But yes, Persona 4, like, that is the game that more or less got me into this series. Actually, by really big coincidence, or not coincidence, but by more or less chance, because I remember it coming out same day as Resident Evil 5 in Europe on PlayStation 2, because like it came out in Japan in 07 and US in 08, but it took a while to come here to Europe on PS2, and I think Square Enix actually published it here. But I remember just picking it up by chance, and I can't remember why I wanted to get it, but I just figured, okay, sure, why not? And I think I actually did get it the same day as Resident Evil 5. But I remember being so enthralled with it. Like, it was just such a fucking good game. And then this is just the vanilla version. We've still yet to touch upon Golden. So, like, I remember enjoying 4 a lot, greatly. And then when Golden was announced, I was just basically dancing on the roof, essentially. And I've spent a lot more time with Golden than I have for vanilla on PS2, because I remember getting stuck with 4 around the time you go and save kanji. Whereas now with Golden, I'm stuck. I'm still stuck, but I'm stuck.
Where are you stuck?
I'm stuck on. I'm stuck with Naruto.
Oh, it's a tough dungeon, Naruto's.
Like, I know what happens anyways because I've watched the anime, so I know what happens anyways. But like, I think I know this is more or less going to be very controversial to say, especially considering we're talking about 3, but I think 4 is going to have a bigger legacy, because like 4 in terms of the series anyways, because 4 had brought in a lot more fans, if you get what I mean.
No, yeah, I completely agree. I think if you talk to somebody about Persona, they think about 4 Golden especially, and like Dan Webb, and if Dan Webb's been on, or you ever get Dan Webb on, he'll talk about Persona. Like, he plays Arena, and I've never played it because unfortunately I got rid of my old gen consoles. But I think 4 is just, it's in my top 10 games. Like, I prefer 3, but I'm like, 4's a masterpiece. I actually think 4 is a perfect RPG. I think in terms of pacing, story, character development, it's just, like we talked about before, I'd love to be in a meeting with the development team. I would love to know how 4, in both its formats, came to exist so well. Like, I was reading about Persona 5 Dancing All Night, or Persona Dancing All Night, and it's got like a proper story in it, like a really complicated Persona part of the lore story to a dancing game. And I'm like, what? How are you even doing this? I mean, part of me is like, I'm really glad you did that, but I would have rather have had Persona 5 this year and then Persona Dancing All Night. But that's by the by. I think Persona 4 I finished 4 times, easily. Actually, I've only, and this is shocking, and I'll probably get mobbed in the street, I've only platinumed 2 PlayStation games. And one of them is Persona 4 Golden.
Well, that's not too bad.
Yeah, like, I think it's worth the time for platinum in that. I have no shame with it. But I think many people are like, I cannot believe. No, 4 platinum games I've done. And one of them is Persona 4. So I think that's an achievement for me. Because there's the one you have to do, you have to listen to all of Risei's dialogue, and it takes forever to do. Like, all of her battle dialogue. And they're so contextual.
God.
That's fun for you to look forward to. But think, when 5 comes out, you'll be able to get that day one and be part of the discussion early, that's what's exciting about Persona, is that you want to be in the first wave of Persona excitement. Like, I've loved being part of Persona 5 hype so far. Like, loved it. Like, my Twitter feed when that last trailer came out, I couldn't move for everyone talking about it, and I was so happy. I was like, this is just the best day.
We'll touch upon Persona 5 properly in a minute, but like, coming back to Persona 3 and rounding this off, then, like, top 3 Persona games, like, how would you rank it? I would say 3, then 4, and then where would you go for from there?
I would go, and here's controversy, with Persona Q.
Oh.
Because I love Persona Q, and if you've not played it, another recommendation, because it's the characters from 4 and 3, but super cute, like
T-Bay.
Yeah, so cute, so kawaii. But with a really robust combat game where, like, it uses a 3DS where you go through these dungeons that are full of puzzles. All the enemies are Persona. You recognise some of them. But then, like, you can draw the map. You've got puzzles to solve. You have little cutaway bits of dialogue where the characters from 4 and 3 interact with each other, which is hilarious because they're all wildly different. They're taught in that one that it's very tall to see the clock tower becomes the dungeons. But then with Persona Q, you can replay the game twice. You replay it once as a Persona 4 protagonist and once as a Persona 3 protagonist. And the story plays out differently. And it's brilliant. Brilliant game. Brilliant.
So just to confirm then, 4, 3, and then Persona Q is your top 3?
No, 3, 4, Persona Q.
Oh, sorry, I said 4, 3. Oh, God.
It's almost 5 past 5.
Honourable mentions then. Go for it.
Oh, crikey. Silent Hill. I'd give Silent Hill 2 and 3 in there. I probably wouldn't put 1 in there. Dishonored. For the record, when I put Bethesda games in here, it's not just because they weren't there, because I will put Fallout 3 and Skyrim in there. Skyrim would have been another one of my possible favourite games as a choice. I can't even know one's done that yet. It's a masterpiece. Kirby's Dream Land on Game Boy. Silent Hill 2. Metal Gear Solid. The first on PlayStation. Everyone's gone to the Rapture. Everybody's gone to the Rapture.
Ooh, a very recent edition. Like, yeah. Like, I'll just stop you there for a second. But like, yeah, just go into detail a little bit about why you picked those games. Let's start with, I would say Skyrim, because like I would like to have a kind of proper discussion on the show about Skyrim.
Skyrim is, I took a week off work for Skyrim because I'm super cool. And I've been a fan of the Elder Scrolls series for a long time, but Skyrim was so different to the other ones in its sense of ambition. It's an ambitious game. It is a game that gives you about 2 minutes of hand-holding and then goes, and then kill a dragon. Off you go. And I love the world, and more than the main story arc, which is brilliant, the side stories you can do, obviously the Dark Brotherhood being the greatest. The Thieves Guild, all the armour, the horse. If you do the Dark Brotherhood one, you get this brilliant companion who follows you around, and it's just insane. Like, just merrily chats about killing people and gouging out their eyes as you run around. You have the horse that's black with red eyes. Side note, it's just amazing. But I think the sense of the end of the world and you being one person in that game is done so well, because you're fighting dragons and you're one dude or dudette. And I love just the mechanic of just like running up a hill, and everyone's got different stories, which is what Bethesda Game Softworks do so well, where you'll never hear somebody say the same story in Skyrim. Like you and me definitely probably didn't kill the first dragon in the same way. I remember running down, I rescued everyone in town, the dragon came through, killed half the characters off, including one I needed to do a side quest with. And then I ran off chasing it, got over encumbered on the way, because I was picking stuff up. I had to fight this dragon, only being able to walk at a snail's pace. And I was screaming and shouting at the screen, because I was like, I can't lose to my first dragon. And then there'd be that enormous heap of bones afterwards. You'd feel absolutely like, I'm a total badass. And That's when you go fighting the dragon priest later on, which are tough as nails. As in one bit in Skyrim, and when you first start the game and you're running down towards the first town, down that hill, there's a waterfall. I remember when I first played it being like, oh, I wonder if there's something behind the waterfall. You know, I've played Elder Scrolls before. I'm pretty sure you didn't just put a waterfall here because it's pretty. So I ran off the waterfall. I couldn't see anything. I was like, do you know what? I'll go and look down at the bottom because maybe there's something under there. And when you go down to the bottom of the waterfall, you'll find some bones. And when you look at the bones, it says along the lines of like, I died doing what you did. Like they know that you were going to try and jump off the top of it. And they're like, no, wait, let's put a warning at the bottom.
Oh dear.
I laughed so hard at that. And I think, yeah, Skyrim, like, and the modding, the community behind Skyrim, like, I didn't get a PC good enough to really play the mods until a few years ago, and I've done a few of them. Like, Seb and Cam do that great series on them as well. I think it's a game that rewards you for going the wrong way. And I now know internally, because obviously I work at Bethesda, that one of the kind of principles of what they stand for is that, like, any of these games, it's about freedom with meaning. I was like, it sums it up perfectly. Like, and I think those games, Skyrim, Fallout, all of them fall under that umbrella of games where I've never ever done the main story in under a month. And I never regret it.
What about, and this is a very recent addition, I must stress, but it's still a fantastic game nonetheless. Everybody's Gone to the Rapture.
Oh, cry! I can tear up talking about this game. I realise, because the other one I'd probably put on the same level of that is Valiant Hearts, as a recent game that really moved me in its storytelling. Obviously, Valiant Hearts does a beautiful job of telling you about the war without it ever feeling like a video game about the war.
Absolutely, yeah.
As a obviously history student, I loved it. I think everybody's Gone to the Rapture, aside from the first thing everyone says, which is correct, is that it has the most beautiful video game score I've ever heard.
Yep, Jessica Kerr, by the way, deserves all the plaudits for that.
Yeah, everything. Like, if she doesn't get every BAFTA this year, I'm quitting the industry. Like, I'm done. This is insane. Because it's swelling and beautiful and sweeping, and it reminds you that video game music doesn't have to be reduced in quality or scale because it's for a video game. You should never have to compromise music in a game, and that game perfectly proves if you don't compromise, you can get this. I love that game so much, not just because the music is amazing, because one, it reminds me of home a little bit, having grown up in small rural villages most of my life. But it's full of... Initially, I thought it was a game, I'm not going to spoil the story too much because it is quite new, about future problem, and it feels at the beginning a little sci-fi-y. And some of the marketing assets that were created for it made it feel like it had a very heavy sci-fi element to it. But the more you play it, and as you learn each character's story as you go through it, just becomes about love. In all these different forms. A mother, a religious man, a mother, a child, a daughter, a boyfriend, a partner. And it's the most beautiful story about love and loss I think I've ever played. And it's been a rough year. I'll say both of us have had with loss in life, and it was a game that really spoke to me about, oh my goodness, like what am I? This is what it feels like, and it reminded me, if you ever watched a film, Waiting for a Friend or Seeking a Friend for the End of the World, which was not Nancy Myers. It was anyway a film with Stephen Carell and Keira Knightley in it about the end of the world, and it's 80% a bit daft, and everyone wrote it off because they said it was like a rom-com. But it wasn't. It was never a rom-com. It was about knowing you've got X amount of time before the end, and what do you do? And it was beautifully sad, but beautifully poignant. I think Everybody's Gone to the Rapture made you came away from that game and you thought, I'll probably make some different life choices. I'm gonna call my friends. I'm gonna go out for dinner with people. And for like a week, I was the most social person ever. Called my mum, told her I loved her, and she was like, "What do you want?" Thanks, Mum. Moved by a video game. Not doing that again.
Oh dear.
Yeah, beautiful and graphically stunning.
And
And my PlayStation 4 didn't sound like it was going to explode, so it didn't push the machine too much.
Fantastic. Great job, Chinese room, making sure PS4s didn't explode. Good job.
Good job, everyone. Thumbs up.
Thumbs up. Double thumbs up. There is actually one more series that's just dawned on me again that you love, and I'm quite surprised you didn't bring it up unless you were about to bring it up when I interrupted you. Mass Effect.
Mass Effect.
Like which Mass Effect game stands out for you? Everyone
2.
says, of course. Everyone says 2, and it's the correct answer. You win $1 million.
It's Mass Effect and Dragon Age are also like probably my top game series, and it would. Dragon Age Inquisition. I'm just doing the Trespasser DLC for that, and I love it. But yeah, Mass Effect 2 is brilliant. Brilliant. It's just so well. It's a story that is brilliantly well told, and for the record, everyone survived my playthrough without me having to look it up. Everyone.
Well, that's all easy for you to say.
Who did you lose?
I lost Tally.
No.
I lost. Who else did I lose? I think I lost. Oh God, who did I lose? I'm trying to remember who I lost. I definitely know I lost Tally, and I definitely lost Zaid.
Yeah, it doesn't count. He's DLC.
Yeah. But still, I'll put him down anyways. To be quite honest, like all I cared about in terms of getting through that and the mission with the collectors was as long as Garrus stayed alive,
yes,
and as long as Chambers stayed alive, everything was golden. Like,
yeah, I was Team Thane for me. I loved Thane's story, and he was my romance in 2, which made 3 super sad.
Top 3 games ever. What would they be? Obviously, Persona 3 at the top. So how did you go?
Top 3 games ever. Persona 3, Silent Hill 2. Third game. Oh, it's so difficult. The first 2 are so easy. I would say Persona 3, Silent Hill 2, and then... Now you've made me think about Mass Effect. I'm getting all conflicted.
That's me.
Oh, I forgot Mass Effect existed. And I kind of want to say Destiny because I'm playing it right now. Probably Fallout 3.
Like, go into briefly why that would be.
I love the story, and as a history student, I really like the kind of the lore of the world quite a lot. I love the idea that this one microchip wasn't invented, and so now we have to deal with robots based on 1940s visions of what robots should be. Like, I love it, and I think the hours I put into that are probably frightening, and I always felt... If you think as well, Broken Steel, the DLC for Fallout 3, was the original Mass Effect 3 DLC. Like, everyone complained at Mass Effect 3 ending. I remember everyone complaining about the Fallout 3 ending, because you couldn't play afterwards. And I think it's been like... Obviously, I work at Bethesda now, but when I thought about companies I wanted to work for, Bethesda was always in my top 3.
So normally around this time, like if you're part of a developer or publisher, I'll probably use this segment here to kind of ask about upcoming wear. So basically in your case with Bethesda, it'd be Fallout 4. But we have a caveat here. Because we had Fallout 3 last week, and because we talked about Fallout 4 in that episode, I was thinking instead, what if instead of Fallout 4, why don't we talk about instead Persona 5?
I am always happy to speculate wildly on what I think Persona 5 is.
Yes, I am much excited, but the delay, Sarah.
I genuinely almost cried. I felt like the prickling behind my eyes. And in my office, Dan is also a huge Persona fan. and we were both just wailing at our desks, and everyone was like, oh goodness, like that must have been a terrible meeting we were in, and we were like, no, just the internet told us something and it's true. It never normally is true. No, I love it. I'm okay to wait for next year if it's like January the 1st it comes out. So that I'm not waiting too long.
No, absolutely not.
It's cool because there's not that much information. Like, you're student in the day, thief at night, and you're homeless. You live on the streets, or you live in like abandoned buildings and things. And it's definitely Shibuya, Tokyo, or it's like the world's clearly supposed to be, but not really, town. But there's so much that I don't know, because it looks like, you know, when they summon the personas, that the mask is the evoker.
Yeah.
From what I can tell, and that the male, the female character, like, they have literary inspired personas. So like his is like Blackbeard, hers is like something like Alice in Wonderland. But I've not seen enough shots of the main protagonist persona to see what it is, because everything feels like really kind of literary. All the trailers, like, you're running through paintings, you're in these huge big towns. Oh my god, the clips of them in the classroom, like, just the graphics. I don't think my body is ready for the graphics.
Like, with Persona 5, like, at least with, like, from the second trailer onwards, because, like, it's been, yeah, from the second trailer onwards, because I'm thinking of the actual revealed trailer with the 5 chairs and the 5 shackles adding into that. But, yeah, with the second trailer, like, it's so slick. It's like, you have, Miguru's music, like, just beating away there. And then you have, like, all the main characters just, you know, doing their thing. It's so slick and so stylish. It seems a lot more slick and stylish than compared to, or at least certainly in a promotional sense, I don't know, compared to 3 and 4.
Yeah, definitely. I think having the backing of Sega is probably helping Atlas quite a lot in terms of getting really high quality assets out. And obviously you could speculate wildly. That's also, you know, why the game's delayed. But I think for me, what really comes across in the trailers is just how different the combat looks. Like, there's that clip of him, like, sweeping from side to side in the corridor to sneak up on things. I'm like, you can sneak up on things without having to run behind them. That sounds amazing. That sounds like what I've wanted to do for a long time. And you can play video games with your cat. Video games with your cat. What other game can you do that in? Huh?
None. Exactly.
Literally, that's the way of Persona. Anything you say you can do in Persona, chances are you can't do it in any other game.
I do think that cat, like, how do you see that cat going? Is it going to be better than Teddy?
I kind of hope so. I hope it isn't a person inside of it again.
Oh god.
Actual Teddy's kind of creepy when he becomes human. I was always like, ooh.
Like, it's endearing when he's in the suit, not so much now when you find out there's an actual real life boy inside.
A real life naked boy inside. I mean, that's just not something you want to have to think about too much.
Look at me, Pa! I'm a real boy now.
Oh, even that, it's so disturbing.
Like, when we first saw that trailer earlier this year, like, at the start of this year, like, the other vibes we got from it was, like, it was super, like, Catherine.
Yes, it feels very Catherine-ate, especially the female character design in it from the other girls in your group, whose name I can't remember. But Catherine was a great game. I loved Catherine. It was the hardest game I've played in so long, but loved it. I really want it to come to Vita. That's my dream. Catherine on Vita made me really happy. As somebody who is one of the few people, I think, who uses their Vita religiously, I would like more games of that.
But, like, it's not just the graphical sense as well, because, well, obviously it is the graphical sense, in part because it does look so much like Catherine, but it's also the social aspect as well, because, like, you can now text your friends in it as well. It's like Catherine.
I know. I wonder if, as well, because it looks like some of the enemy design is the same. So, like, in the trailer they showed at TGS recently, you saw the Sandman in it. There was that same kind of startled, you know, sound when you find them. But I'm really torn, because part of me wants to obsessively watch everything they do. The other part of me, I kind of don't want to know too much. I especially don't want to know any of the story. I don't want to know too much, because one of the great things with Persona has always been that opening introductory section where you learn. Especially if you're a thief and living on the streets, it's got to have a cool story behind it. How did you get there? Where are your family? How are the other kids on the street? Like, what? Tell me more. Just give me a little bit of something, and then I can stop obsessing. The longer it is, the more I obsess, and then I ruin things for myself. Did you see the theory about Persona 3 and 4 remastered?
I did, yes.
I think that sounds right to me.
It has to happen. It just makes so much sense.
I reckon that's what they've delayed it to put those out this year as a stopgap, because Atlas don't do anything on accident. They're not a company. Oh, look at the mysterious way letter disappeared. There's no way. It's too specific.
I do think that's going to happen, but if it does happen, it's not going to be this year. Certainly not in the West. No, it's like, if anything, it'll be very, very late, early next year in Japan.
I don't know.
It'll it'll be very late this year, early next in Japan, and then summer next year in the West. While Persona 5 comes out, like, say, September next year in the West.
I don't know. Yeah.
Because it makes the biggest load of sense. Because, like, if Persona 5 is coming out next summer in Japan, then Persona 5 is going to come out in the West, I would say September, October, and God knows when it's going to come out to Europe. God knows who's going to publish it in Europe.
Having had Dan Cito on the show, me and Dan have never really agreed on importing, because I import sometimes. I'll probably import Persona 5 from the States if it comes out there much sooner.
Oh, yeah, I mean, like, I'm the same. I'm going to do it.
I mean, I've done it for Dancing All Night as well, but that's because I want the Disco Fever edition, and they announced the European version of that too late here, and I was like, oh,
yeah,
I wasn't going to risk it.
I actually imported my version I imported a boxed copy of Persona 4 Golden from Japan, even though I don't know a lick of Japan, because I wanted to play that game so bad.
You know, Persona 4 Golden, I wanted so much when it came out, and I couldn't get it. It was like a huge gap between the UK and US. And Greg Miller sent me it when I was working at Rocksteady. We'd met a few times, and I was on Twitter wailing about the fact I couldn't get it, and he bought me it and shipped it over. Cementing our Persona friendship. Every time I see him, he gives me a new piece of Persona merch that he's picked up somewhere across the world. It's so cool. I love him so much.
I didn't expect that story. Well, it's going to be a long wait for next summer, basically, and it's going to be a long wait for whatever comes next in terms.
Are you getting Dancing All Night? That's the question. Have you got it ordered?
I don't have it ordered because I'm picking my battles, Sarah. You don't know how hard this upcoming season is with games. Cause, like,
what else is there?
There's their own fucking game. There's Fallout 4.
Yeah, I mean that's a given.
But, like,
you don't.
There's also Rise of the Tomb Raider, Halo 5 Guardians. What else is there? There's Just Cause 3, Xenoblade. There's so many.
Star Wars as well, I guess.
Star Wars, yep.
Yeah, you don't need these games. You don't need them. Just play Fallout.
Including your own.
Fallout will take all the time. It's like insane amount of time for that game. You're gonna have your dog meat running around with you. You want to do your own town mini games, your crafting. I don't think you need the other ones. Cancel all your orders. Keep Fallout 4. There you go. I've just saved you about £300. You're welcome.
So just Fallout 4, and I won't bother with Dancing All Night then.
Yeah, okay, I accept that. As long as Fallout 4 is the king, I'm fine. And I'm actively saving you money on this now. And everyone else listening, I'm saving you all money. Cancel all the pre-orders. You just need Fallout 4.
Just imagine what it'd be like if Fallout 4 and Persona 5 were launched on the same day. Imagine the conflict.
None for me, Fallout 4, but then inside I'll weep silently. I don't think I need to hug Fallout 4. I think you're all aware that It's coming out. If you don't, it's at Fallout. And if you want to follow me, it's at Sarah Wellock84. Or if you just search Nuka Girl, because I'm always on brand, I will talk on there a lot about, especially the next few months, about Fallout. And then on Instagram, I'm Riku Sarah, where you can enjoy hating me for going on holiday.
Reality, never be charity. Never be new fight, I come out society. Damn right, mommy's not here, gonna fight all night, right here, shuttle to the cloud direction. Seize the moment and destroy the nation. To run slow motion, give me motivation. Free down now, dead on arrival. Round up around, spit out, hold over. Round like a rolling stone, coming a crowd. Watch out the road, and this till out. Guess what, this sound and bounce all ground. So round up, don't ease your pace, cause enemies brutal. Moment of truth, ain't no truth. You're the only one world, one love. But the battle goes on, shadows all mass. Destruction! Oh yeah! Throw it up now! Throw it up now! I like this right now.
Thanks for listening to my favourite game. Next week, Jake Tucker on XCOM Enemy Unknown, or X-COM Enemy Unknown. You'll get the joke next week. Until then, bye bye.